Leo Kane knelt in the center of the Galactic Council's Grand Tribunal, hands shackled, a steel collar fastened around his throat. The suppression field around him crackled faintly, designed to contain threats far beyond the abilities of a 10-year-old boy. Yet, the Council treated him as if he were one. Towering alien dignitaries surrounded the chamber, seated in high, curved rows like judges at an ancient trial. The air smelled of incense and sterile metal, a mockery of justice disguised as ceremony. At the highest seat, High Chancellor Varos Alzyn of the Zelthran Dominion watched with reptilian disinterest. His deep violet skin shimmered under the chamber's artificial glow, his elongated features unreadable. Leo's gaze never wavered. He had inherited that from his father. Varos spoke, his voice cold and final. "Leo Kane of Earth. You are accused of inciting rebellion against the Galactic Council, conspiring to undermine the peace, and aiding insurgents. The punishment is death." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Not at the sentence, his fate had been decided long before this trial, but at how the boy had remained silent through it all. "No pleas. No denials. Do you understand the charges?" Varos asked. Leo nodded once. "Do you have any last words?" For the first time, the boy spoke. "My father is coming for you." Silence. A brief pause, just long enough for discomfort to set in. Then, a ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Some delegates exchanged knowing glances. Others scoffed. Varos allowed himself a small smile. "Your father is bound by treaties. He will not act." Leo's lips curled slightly. "Then you don't know my father." The Chancellor sighed, as if humoring a child's fantasy. With a flick of his wrist, he gestured to the enforcer standing beside the boy. The executioner stepped forward, activating a plasma blade with a sharp hiss. The glowing edge pulsed with heat, casting a faint blue light across the chamber floor. Leo didn't flinch. Far away, on a distant world, Dominic Kane watched. Every screen on Earth broadcasted the tribunal in real time. Every citizen saw the boy kneeling before the blade. Every soldier, every officer, every leader witnessed the moment unfold. Inside Earth's Central Command, no one moved. No one spoke. The air itself seemed to tighten. General Dominic Kane stood at the center of it all, arms folded, jaw locked, watching the son he could not save. The executioner raised the blade. Leo closed his eyes. The plasma cut downward. The feed went black. No sound. No announcement. Just an abrupt end. A single word broke the silence. "Sir?" One of Kane's officers, voice uncertain. Kane exhaled slowly. The air in the room felt thinner now, the world smaller. His grip tightened behind his back until his knuckles turned white. No fury. No outbursts. Just the slow, creeping cold of inevitability. He turned to his officers, his voice calm. "Send a message." "To whom?" "To everyone." He strode toward the holomap at the center of the room. Planets, territories, and trade routes shimmered in the air, a delicate web of alliances and control. With a single motion, he erased the Galactic Council's protected zones from the map. "Sir, if we—" Kane cut him off with a glance. "They killed my son." He tapped a location on the map, Etheris 1, the Council's heart. "We burned them first." Etheris 1, Galactic Council Citadel. Chancellor Varos lifted a glass of golden nectar, swirling it lazily. The execution had been necessary. Humans had overstepped their place for too long. A message had been sent. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. He tapped the interface on his wrist, bringing up a floating holoscreen. An alert. Then another. Then a dozen more. His amusement faded. A tremor ran through the citadel. Faint, almost imperceptible, but real. "Chancellor," an officer's voice crackled through the intercom, laced with alarm. "We have a situation." Varos straightened. "Explain." Another tremor. An unknown fleet just exited hyperspace. A pause. Then, lower, it's them. The wine glass slipped from Varos's fingers, shattering against the floor. A third tremor, stronger this time. Then the unmistakable roar of explosions. The chamber doors burst open, and a frantic aide stumbled inside. "Sir, planetary defenses are failing. They took out the outer perimeter in seconds. A violent explosion cut him off. The windows above the throne cracked, fractures webbing through the reinforced glass. Beyond them, fire and wreckage filled the sky. Varos turned to the holoscreen, bringing up the live tactical feed. Red markers flooded the system. Hundreds of human warships, moving in unison. This wasn't Earth's navy. This was Dominic Kane's personal fleet. A transmission overrode every channel. Every screen, every device, every frequency. A voice. His voice. High Chancellor Varos. The room seemed to freeze. Every breath hitched. Varos swallowed. General Kane. Kane's voice carried no anger. No hatred. Just the measured weight of a man who had already made up his mind. "You killed my son." Varos opened his mouth, grasping for words. None came. The screens flickered, displaying a live feed of Earth's fleet tearing through Council defenses like paper. Kane continued. "Your stations will fall. Your fleets will burn. Your worlds will know the same silence you forced upon me." Varos's heart pounded. "General, listen to reason. This is madness. Earth's government won't. Earth isn't stopping me." Outside, another station detonated, debris scattering into the void. Alarms wailed across Etheris 1. Kane's voice was the last thing Varos heard before the transmission cut. "I am coming for you." The war had begun. The wrath of Dominic Kane. The void of space churned with fire. Earth's fleet descended upon Etheris 1 like a storm with no mercy, no hesitation. Warships broke through the planet's defenses, their weapons carving through enemy lines with surgical precision. The Council had spent centuries fortifying its stronghold. It took Dominic Kane less than an hour to shatter it. From the Bridge of the Vengeance, Kane stood unmoving, watching the battle unfold. His face, carved from cold steel, betrayed no emotion. Officers moved around him, issuing commands, tracking targets, coordinating strikes, but he remained still. He had already set everything in motion. Now, he waited for the inevitable. "Outer defenses are collapsing," Commander Rains reported. Her voice was calm, but beneath it lay an edge of disbelief. "Their fleets are in full retreat." Of course they were. The Council's forces had never faced true war. They had spent centuries governing, posturing, dictating terms from their ivory towers. They had never fought a real enemy. Kane had built his career on war. And he had just made this personal. "Status on the Chancellor?" His voice was even, but the bridge fell silent at the question. Rains hesitated. "We've pinpointed his location inside the inner citadel. The Council's elite guard is holding position around him." Kane's gaze flicked to the holomap. Etheris 1's capital was burning. Strategic strikes had already disabled planetary defenses, and most of the city's infrastructure was crumbling under the relentless assault. Yet, the citadel still stood, a final monument to the arrogance of the Council. It wouldn't stand for much longer. "Drop teams?" Kane asked. "First wave deployed. No resistance so far. The second wave is on standby. Send them in. I want boots on the ground within the hour." Rains hesitated again. "Sir, orbital bombardment could clear the citadel in minutes." Kane's eyes darkened. "No. It would be easy, too easy, to reduce the structure to dust." But Leo had died there. His son's blood had stained the Council's floors. Kane would not grant them the mercy of a quick death. "I'm going down there myself." A ripple of unease passed through the bridge. Rains stiffened. "General, protocol dictates." Forget protocol. His tone silenced any further objections. Rains exhaled, then gave a curt nod. I'll prep your team. Kane turned to the viewport, watching the council's last defenses crumble beneath his wrath. He had promised them fire. And he always kept his promises. Etheris 1, Inner Citadel. Panic choked the corridors. The elite of the Galactic Council, ambassadors, dignitaries, high-ranking officials, scrambled through marble halls, desperate to escape the unthinkable. The humans had come. They weren't supposed to. Earth was meant to be tame. A civilization that had accepted its place. The Council had made sure of it. Yet now, Dominic Kane was here, bringing war to their doorstep. Inside the council chamber, High Chancellor Varos paced, his violet skin glistening under the chamber's dim light. His advisors bombarded him with panicked reports, fleet losses, planetary collapse, ground forces breaching the perimeter. We need to evacuate, one of them urged. Varos snapped his gaze toward him. Where? Earth has cut off every hyperspace lane. Every station is under attack. We still have forces. They're dying. Varos slammed his fist onto the console. The humans are not fighting for victory. They're fighting for vengeance. The chamber trembled as another explosion rocked the citadel. Outside, the sky burned with streaks of plasma fire. The human warships hung over the capital like executioners, methodical in their destruction. Varos's hands clenched. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Earth was supposed to kneel. Not rise. A sudden silence fell over the chamber. The emergency alarms, constant and wailing, had stopped. Varos's pulse quickened. Why did the alarms stop? A guard tapped his communicator. Static. Then, a single transmission broke through. This is General Dominic Kane. The citadel is secured. Surrender. A cold shiver ran down Varos's spine. The doors to the chamber exploded inward. Smoke and debris filled the air as human soldiers stormed in, their armor dark and battle-scarred. Their rifles hummed with lethal precision, scanning the room for targets. And then, through the smoke, he stepped in. Dominic Kane. He did not shout. He did not rush. He moved with the quiet assurance of a man who had already decided how this would end. The council members shrank back. Varos forced himself to stand firm. General Kane, he said, voice steady. This is madness. Kane shot him. A precise, measured shot. Not fatal, but enough to send Varos crashing to the ground, clutching his leg in agony. The chamber erupted in chaos. Guards moved forward, only for Kane's soldiers to cut them down in an instant. Kane advanced, stepping over bodies without a second glance. His weapon stayed leveled at Varos's head. You killed my son. Varos coughed, pain lacing his voice. It was necessary. The boy, Kane fired again, this time hitting Varos's shoulder. The Chancellor screamed. There's no justification, Kane said, voice flat. No politics. No diplomacy. No excuses. Varos trembled. Earth will not stand behind this. They will not. Kane's lips curled in something that might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. You still don't understand. He crouched, his voice lowering to something colder than death itself. I'm not here on behalf of Earth. Varos's breath caught. Kane's soldiers moved through the chamber, rounding up the surviving council members, securing the area with ruthless efficiency. Outside, the citadel's defenses had fallen. The council's rule had ended in a single night. Dominic Kane straightened. You sentenced my son to death, High Chancellor. He raised his weapon, pressing the barrel against Varos's forehead. This is your sentence. The last thing Varos saw was Kane's finger tightening on the trigger. Then, darkness. The war that changed everything. The body of High Chancellor Varos lay crumpled on the polished floor of the Galactic Council's grand chamber. Blood seeped between the cracks of the marble, spreading like ink on parchment. The room was silent, save for the distant echoes of battle outside. Dominic Kane lowered his weapon, the barrel still hot from the shot that ended the most powerful man in the galaxy. No ceremony. No grand speeches. Just justice. He turned, eyes sweeping over the remaining council members huddled in fear. Some clung to their seats, others trembled where they stood. These were the architects of Earth's suffering. The ones who had ordered his son's death, believing there would be no consequence. They had been wrong. One of the dignitaries, a frail-looking Sorthian, stepped forward with shaky hands raised. "General Kane, please. We can negotiate." Kane's expression did not change. "Negotiate?" His voice carried no mockery, no rage, just certainty. "I gave your leader a chance to negotiate. He chose execution instead." The alien swallowed hard. We regret what happened." Kane took a step forward, his presence alone enough to make the delegates recoil. "Regret?" He let the word hang in the air, heavy with disbelief. "You regret that your cowardice has led you here. You regret that you thought Earth would suffer in silence." He let his gaze sweep the room. "But you do not regret what you did to my son." The Sorthian had no answer. Kane turned to his officers, standing at the entrance of the chamber, their weapons at the ready. "Secure them," he ordered. "Lock down every last one of them. I want every surviving official in custody." Commander Rains stepped forward, nodding. "Understood." The remaining council members were rounded up, stripped of their ceremonial robes, their insignias torn away. Some begged. Some cursed. It made no difference. Kane walked past them, past the body of Varos, past the wreckage of a government that had ruled with arrogance for too long. He had broken the council in a single night. But the war was not over yet. It was just beginning. Earth's reckoning. The news spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, screens lit up with images of the Council's defeat. The once mighty government that had controlled thousands of worlds had been dismantled overnight. The footage of Kane standing in the chamber, the High Chancellor's body at his feet, became legend. Some planets rejoiced. The oppressed, the conquered, the ones who had lived under the Council's iron grip saw Earth's vengeance as liberation. Revolts erupted in colonies where the Council's rule had been absolute. Chains were being broken. Others trembled. The ruling elite of the galaxy had never seen Earth as a true power. They had underestimated what humanity was capable of. Now, they knew the truth. Earth was not just another world in the Council's empire. It was a force they could no longer ignore. The Council's last stand. Deep in the outer rim, what remained of the Council's military regrouped. Admiral Sorek, one of the last surviving high-ranking officers, watched the reports with growing dread. "This is impossible," one of his captains muttered. "The humans can't have done this alone." "They didn't need help," Sorek said grimly. "They had Kane." A silence settled over the bridge. Everyone knew the name now. Dominic Kane had become something more than a soldier. He was a force of nature, unstoppable, unrelenting. Sorek turned to his fleet commanders. "We have one chance. We cannot let Earth consolidate its power." His fingers hovered over a star map, tracing a path toward Sol. "If we strike now, we might." An alarm interrupted him. A lieutenant paled. "Sir, hyperspace signatures detected. Multiple fleets inbound." Sorek's blood ran cold. "How many?" The lieutenant swallowed hard. "All of them." The holoscreen flickered to life, displaying incoming vessels, Earth's warships, in numbers that defied reason. And at the center of the formation, the Vengeance led the charge. Sorek's voice barely escaped his lips. "He's coming." The final hour. The Council's last fleet never stood a chance. They tried to mount a defense, but Earth's forces had momentum, a fury that could not be stopped. The battle raged across the void, but it was not a battle. It was a massacre. Earth's warships tore through the remnants of the Council's navy, reducing their might to ashes. The last strongholds fell, one after another. On the Vengeance, Kane stood on the bridge, watching as the final ships were wiped from existence. Commander Rains exhaled, almost in disbelief. It's over. The enemy fleet had been annihilated. The Galactic Council, the once undisputed rulers of the stars, had been erased from history. Kane remained silent. He had avenged his son. He had burned the ones responsible. But there was no satisfaction in this. No peace. Rains hesitated before speaking. Sir, what now? The question hung in the air. The galaxy had changed. Earth was no longer a subjugated world. It had become the dominant power. But Kane had never wanted power. He had wanted justice. And now that justice had been served, there was nothing left. He turned to the viewport, staring into the vast unknown. We rebuild, he said finally. We protect our own. And we never let this happen again. The war was over. But humanity's new chapter had just begun. Epilogue, The Legend of Kane. The years passed, but the name Dominic Kane never faded. Across the stars, his story became legend. Some feared him. Others worshipped him. Many called him the man who broke the council. And on Earth, where a father had once stood in silent agony as his son was taken from him, a monument rose, a towering figure of steel, standing tall against the endless sky. Beneath it, a single inscription. For Leo. And for every child who will never be taken again. And so, the galaxy remembered.